Hello, classic rock fans. I am reporting just a couple of days after seeing opening night of the American leg of Duran Duran's Future Past tour. They have a new album out and they're touring the United States with Nile Rodgers and Chic. The tour kicked off at the United Center in Chicago. This was the first time I've ever seen either band, and I can tell you I've been wanting to see Duran Duran for years now, but they unfortunately have not played Milwaukee in almost 20 years. But when I saw they were coming back to the States for a leg of this tour, I thought I couldn't wait any longer, and I'd come down to Chicago to check out the show, and just what a fantastic show it was. And it wasn't just the show. Before I got to the United Center, I had time to head over to my favorite record store in Chicago. That's Bucket O' Blood on the north side. And while I was there, I picked up this record by Chic, as it was only appropriate, given that I was going to see them later that night. And afterwards, we got some dinner and then went straight to the United Center for the show. This was my first time seeing either band, so I'll talk about Nile Rodgers first. Nile Rodgers just about stole the show. So if you're not familiar with him, Nile Rodgers is a super producer. He got started in the 70s with his band Chic, and after they had a couple of big hits, he started writing songs for other artists like Sister Sledge and Diana Ross at the end of the 70s. And in the 80s, he went in a more pop direction and started working with artists like Madonna, David Bowie, INXS, Duran Duran, and many others. And he scored big hits with all of those acts, songs that are still played on Variety Hits Radio today. And this guy stayed successful all through the 80s and 90s, and he had a big resurgence about 10 years ago when he scored a huge hit with Daft Punk and Pharrell Williams' Get Lucky. I'm sure you know that song. So Chic's discography might only have a couple of hits that, you know, casual fans would know, but Nile Rodgers has a huge list of accomplishments. So his set list opened with some classic Chic tracks, and then he played a medley of hits he wrote with Madonna, like A Virgin, Material Girl. He did a couple of songs that he, co-produced with David Bowie, Modern Love and Let's Dance. He did Get Lucky, and he talked about what that song meant to him because I guess around the time of that song he had been diagnosed with cancer, but he has since, come out of that and has a clean bill of health and, feels very lucky, so it's a very meaningful song for him.
A few years ago, I was suffering from my second bout of cancer. This song is called Get Lucky. I feel like the luckiest man in the world because after this record came out, I was cancer-free, and I have been cancer-free ever since.
Which was just, wonderful to hear about because this guy's a national treasure, and it was a real treat to see him perform live. And then they closed the show with Les Freak and Good Times, which are just two of the best songs of the 70s. It's just an incredible 1-2 punch of great funk music from that golden era of classic 70s music. So Nile Rodgers and Chic got a full hour, which is very much appreciated. I'm glad Duran Duran did not try to condense him to a half hour or even 45 minutes. Like, this is a guy who has a discography that deserves more time than a typical opening act, and he got it, which was great. An hour was the perfect amount of time for, I guess for me, seeing Nile for the first time. My girlfriend had come to the show with me, and she was not familiar with Nile Rodgers, or Duran Duran, really. And after Nile Rodgers and Chic went off stage, the first thing she said to me was, "Boy, I would hate to follow them." And, fair enough, because Nile Rodgers set an almost impossibly high standard of great, accessible, fun pop music that had the crowd totally on their feet, and it was just a wonderful show and a very impressive set list. Kudos to Duran Duran for bringing Nile Rodgers onto this bill, because this is absolutely a money's worth type of show. You are getting some serious bang for your buck coming out to see Duran Duran and Nile Rodgers and Chic. This package sort of reminds me of a tour I saw earlier this year. I saw Journey and Toto together, and I thought that was a wonderful package, considering all the hits, and considering how many fans those bands must have in common, and how those discographies complement each other. I genuinely feel that Chic and Duran Duran sort of up the ante on that. I think there is great crossover appeal for both of these bands. If you're a fan of dance music, if you're a fan of pop music, if you're a fan of funk, these are two groups that really go well together. And if you're a music nerd like me, then you'll really like this pairing, because there are deep roots between these bands. And it's not just that Nile Rodgers wrote songs with Duran Duran, but Chic's original drummer, Bernard Edwards, was the guy that Andy Taylor and John Taylor reached out to join them in the Power Station, along with Robert Palmer, in the mid-'80s. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with tonight's show. They didn't do any Power Station music or even reference that group. But it's just kind of cool to see bands with some relationships work together, I guess. The only missed opportunity of the night for Nile Rodgers is that he did not come out at any point to join Duran Duran on a song, and I think that's a big missed opportunity. It would have been cool to see him jam with them on The Reflex or Notorious, but oh well, hopefully later in the tour. I know he's done it before in the past, so maybe there'll be opportunities for future shows. So moving on from Nile Rodgers and Chic to the main event, let me just say, Duran Duran set a really high bar with having Nile Rodgers open for them, but they lived up to it. You know, this is what great bands do. Great bands have the confidence to put other great bands in the opening slot, because one, you know, that's going to elevate the show as a whole. A band like Chic got everybody on their feet and everybody having a great time, and Duran Duran has the showmanship and discography to keep it going, and nobody lost interest after seeing Nile Rodgers. And I think that sort of thing is what brings out the best in bands. So I think it was really cool that Duran Duran picked such an awesome band to be the opener, and I think it elevated their game as well, because Duran Duran's set list was awesome. They opened with Wild Boys and Hungry Like the Wolf, and the show just kind of stayed at that high energy. They did play a lot of music from the new album, but they of course did not skip big hits like A View to a Kill and The Reflex, Notorious, Come Undone, Ordinary World. Oh, they just have so many hits. It's just crazy. You know, so they would do a new song and then they would do a couple of classic ones, and you know, they're a band that a lot of people don't even realize how many songs they know by them. So if you're not totally familiar with Duran Duran, I would bet 10 to 1 that if you went to see them without looking at the set list, you would have the moment of, oh, I didn't know they did this song. I love this song, you know? So, yeah, it was a great time. I love Duran Duran. They're absolutely a favorite band of mine. I always felt that there's sort of a bizarre snobbery of like really old school classic rock fans to Duran Duran. I think Duran Duran represents that whole MTV 80s era that a lot of 60s and 70s rock fans really resent. And I'm just not on board with that at all. You know, I remember a funny story of a place I used to work at years and years ago. There was an older guy that I talked to about music quite a bit because we liked a lot of the same music. And he was lending me a box set of Kinks CDs. And as he's giving it to me, he says something along the lines of how much he appreciated that we could talk about music with each other at work, because, you know, he couldn't talk about the music he loves with his wife because his wife loves Duran Duran. And he said it kind of grumbling. And in that moment, I didn't have the heart to tell him that I also love Duran Duran. In fact, I love Duran Duran as much as I love the Kinks. So, I guess my point in all this is that if you really are an old school rock and roll fan, maybe give them another listen. Maybe get over yourself a little bit. The 80s was a great time for rock and roll. Duran Duran is one of the great pop acts of all time. And also, if you see them live, Duran Duran is a much heavier rock and roll band than you might suspect. You know, I know they have this old image of like being on MTV and like Teen Beat magazine, and you might think all their songs are kind of like light and bubbly, but there was some pretty hard rock from the new album and from the other songs that they selected to play. This was a very loud show, so there's a lot more power going on with this band than I think they have a reputation for, and that was all great for me. You know, the songs I didn't know, I enjoyed, and I'm definitely going to check out that new album. I thought some of the new tracks were very interesting. Oh, one of the coolest things they did right at the end of the night was they played Girls on Film, and they did it as a medley with a cover of a Calvin Harris song called Acceptable in the 80s. And there is a little bit of genius to that, because Girls on Film is absolutely a song that would be, I don't know, characterized as problematic nowadays. So mashing that up with a song that is absolutely not about cancel culture or anything weird like that, but they recontextualize the Calvin Harris song by mashing it up with their old school hit. And again, there's a little bit of artistry there, and I appreciated that, and I thought that was a cool move. Without a doubt, I recommend this show. Nile Rodgers and Chic are phenomenal on their own right. In my opinion, I think they should be able to headline stadium shows. But for whatever the reason, they're not the headliner, they're the opening band, but they get a full hour, and Duran Duran is not a disappointment afterwards. They live up to the standard that Nile Rodgers sets, and given your tastes, they might even surpass it, because they still sound great, they still play fantastically. There's a lot of great energy. Simon Le Bon is a very charismatic frontman. You know, I'm up in the 300 level, you know, miles away in the nosebleeds, but his body language on stage and his jokes, all of that landed all the way up in the rafters where I was, and it was a really enjoyable night. So, yeah, if this tour comes to town, without a doubt, go see him, get those tickets. You're going to have a really fun night. This is a good show to go with friends to, because there's going to be a lot of pop music from the 70s and 80s and into the 90s that you're going to hear all through the night, and it's going to be a big throwback dance party, and you're going to have a lot of fun. So a huge thumbs up for Duran Duran and Nile Rodgers and Chic. Maybe one of the best shows I've seen this year. Certainly some of the most fun I've had out, and the only thing I would say to Duran Duran is please come to Milwaukee. It's not that I hate going to Chicago, but Duran Duran has not played Milwaukee in a very long time, and I know there's more fans than besides just me here. So please, if they do, I will absolutely go see them again, because again, this is a band some 40 years deep into their career, but they are still performing at a very high level. So yeah, absolutely. Go check it out. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this concert review, please check out the other concert reviews I've done on this channel. If you're a fan of classic rock or 80s music, I guarantee I've talked about a different band that you're a fan of. And if you are a fan of classic rock, I would check out the podcast that I do about classic rock. We've had a lot of great guests on the show this year, so all the more reason to take a look at that. And you can do that by subscribing to this YouTube channel. And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Links to our social media and podcast are in the description below. So, thanks again for joining me here. See Duran Duran if you can, and keep rocking.